Good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday, and it is Mighty Men Thursday. So if you would like to be a part of the broadcast, please email me at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com, or you can send me a direct message on X. And Spud McKenzie, thank you so much for joining us here this morning. Good morning to you. And JJ, 1989. He says, good morning, peace and blessings to you as well. So let's get into our Kids Corner.
He always had the newest toys and the coolest clothes, but today, something went wrong. During recess, Tom accidentally knocked Brad's new basketball into a puddle. Brad was furious. Tom said sorry, but Brad refused to forgive him. "You ruined my basketball," Brad yelled, pushing Tom away. Brad couldn't let it go. He kept thinking about how unfair it was, but his anger made him feel worse. Later, Brad saw Tom playing with others, laughing and having fun. That's when he realized, was it really worth staying mad? Brad took a deep breath and walked over to Tom. "I'm sorry I got so mad. Do you want to play?" Tom smiled, and just like that, everything was okay again. Sometimes forgiving someone doesn't just help them, it helps us too. Forgiving others makes room for more happiness, friendship, and fun.
Yes, it does. And you know what? We're going to have to remember that in these days and times that we're in, you know, especially when we're dealing with the conflict that we're in. I'm still not calling it a war until Congress funds it, but we're in a conflict, and there's going to be a lot of things that are said and done out of pure emotion with individuals, and we need to be prepared to forgive, right? Because it is for us, right? The other person, they're kind of moving on, but if you are holding on to any type of anger against somebody else and they have no idea that that's happening, you need to work on forgiveness because it is for you. It truly, truly is. Well, so with that, let's get into honoring God with our body. So, God, please guard our mind and our thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect our ears and help us listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. Please speak life over our mouth. God, please help our hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, please protect our reproductive organs. Help us to honor you, God, with purity. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect our feet as we walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. So, again, thank you guys so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. If you've not joined us before, that is something we say daily. And tomorrow is actually going to be our last live broadcast day. Like I said, I am still going to be around, but it's going to be in a shorter format and it'll be a pre recorded format. So I won't be live for a little bit. Because, like I said, my internet connection is going to be a little bit different. And yeah, I'm just not going to be on that struggle bus. As we say, we've been there before. we've been there before. I've done some location things and I just had to tap out. I was like, yeah, we're doing this and not this. So again, it will be in a different format, but I will still be with you guys. So again, I'll be doing shorts. I would say maybe 10, 15-minute videos, but that's what it's going to. That's where we're going. The new format we're going to. So with that, I wanted to start off this morning with some trending topics on X. There's a few things going on that I was a little, uh, I don't want to say surprised about. I'm just glad that they're there and it's happening and it's what's going on. Let me get it on the screen for you guys. So Gunther Eagleman says it's sickening. Minnesotans got robbed of $9 billion in taxpayer money through just 14 Medicaid programs under Tim Walz's watch. So $9 billion and it was just 14 programs. That's a lot of money. So today, every single Democrat on the Rules Committee voted to block any investigation into that massive fraud. This is very telling of the Democrat Party. And I've got some more states that are doing things outside of Minnesota. What is going on with the Democratic Party? Again, you're not a party that's about the rule of law. You want everything lawless and upside down. And then when the people get upset and they start attacking one another, I was actually listening to InfoWars with Harrison yesterday, and I just felt so bad. It just seemed his heart, you listen to people and you're just like, oh, you need a hug. Where's your wife? She needs to hug you. No, but anyway, what I was getting at listening to him was like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why are they doing these things? They're doing these things to make us turn against one another. Because see, it's going to get to a point in time where this shows up at somebody's doorstep. These judges releasing people that shouldn't be released, right? Democrats writing policy to literally protect evil behavior. And see, once it affects too many people that want to stand up for righteousness, right? And what's right, and they physically go out to take matters into their own hands, then they're going to stand back and go, oh, we need martial law. Why is everything out of control? You want the people to start looking at one another for the damage that you've caused. And what I'm telling everybody is keep your wits about you. Don't get emotional about this. See the game. And I'm telling you, it's game for what it is. It's Republicans and Democrats. They want us into the Hunger Games, period. Look at it. I mean, just really take a step outside the forest, okay? Look at it. Look at what's really happening. Again, Republicans are doing this too. I showed you guys a list of the Republicans that support the Dignity Act, right? And that's basically allowing people who do not have any type of status, that have been in this country illegally for decades, to continue to live here as if nothing's wrong. That's the bill, okay? It is backdoor amnesty. And they keep going, oh, it's not amnesty. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Stop lying to us. But see, you want to continue to let evil reign to destroy this country. And I'm telling every level-headed person out there within the sound of my voice, don't allow this. You beat them at the ballot box and you put better people in office, and we take our country back one seat at a time. Because obviously they do not care anymore. We cannot continue to vote people back into office that do not care. Just telling you, it's time. Now, with that, let's get into the video. Now, it's about a minute long.
Chair Long?
No.
Vice Chair Schultz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hollins?
No.
Representative Allen?
Yes.
Representative Coulter?
No.
Representative Frederick?
No.
Representative Howard?
No.
Representative Jacob?
Yes.
Representative George? Representative Nash? Representative Purcell?
Purcell, no.
Representative Scott? Representative Steer?
Yes.
And Representative Zalesnikar?
Yes.
There being 8 ayes and 8 nays, the motion does not prevail. That concludes our agenda for today. The meeting is adjourned.
Chair Long?
So nothing's going to happen to the people that defrauded the state. $9 billion. Nothing. And this is what Democrats are doing. This should have been, yes, get the investigation done. Done. This shouldn't even been a question. But this is letting you know where people are. They do not care. They do not care. They are okay with the evil. Now, another top story that I wanted to get into is Minnesota committee deadlocks. That was just what we saw, right? On impeachment probes for Walton Edison, right? Like it's just what I read, but I'll read this topic. So Republicans pushed House Resolution 6 to probe potential misconduct amid up to $9 billion in estimated fraud, losses in state programs like Medicaid since 2019, including the $250 million Feeding Our Future scandal. Whistleblowers like DHS employee Faye Bernstein described retaliation after raising concerns about improper payments. Democrats called it a political distraction with no personal charges against the officials, urging focus on anti-fraud legislation instead, while Republicans vowed to continue pursuing accountability because they're all of their hands are dirty in it. $9 billion? Okay. All right. And the House Speaker backs expulsion of Representative Cherfilus-McCormick over the $5 million funds misuse. And this lady right here, the $103,000 diamond that she bought and had it in the picture, and then removed it from the picture later on after people called her out on it. Ma'am, so sad. So House Speaker Mike Johnson called the evidence against Florida Democrat Cherfilus-McCormick indisputable, supporting her possible expulsion following a House Ethics Committee hearing on April 21st. The charges stem from a November 2020 federal indictment accusing her and her brother of laundering overpayments from COVID vaccination contract into legal campaign donations and personal use. An ethics subcommittee found clear evidence of 25 House rule violations, drawing bipartisan calls for resignation or expulsion from figures like Representative Anna Paulina Luna and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. While she denies wrongdoing and has pleaded not guilty. Ma'am, if you don't resign like Swalwell, look, at least if you resign, you will have some dignity a little bit. And you will also have, if you qualify for it, with the pension from Congress, you're fighting. Because even here's the thing, even if you resign, that's not going to absolve you from federal charges. See, I don't think people realize the mess that she's in. They want to expel her because of the federal charges that she's under. Right. This has nothing to really do with what she's done in her seat, even though she, misused campaign funds to get her seat. Ma'am, if you don't walk away and resign, whoever's guiding you, because you're going to be in an orange jumpsuit and a disgrace and expelled from Congress. It's going to happen. I'm just saying. All right, a last topic I want to get into here on X. Supreme Court weighs striking Mississippi's late mail-in ballot law. So the Supreme Court heard arguments on March 23rd in a challenge to Mississippi's law allowing mail-in ballots postmarked by election day, but received up to 5 business days later. So that means, let's say it's on November 4th, that's the election, but they don't get the ballots until the 9th, right? They're like, we still have to count those ballots because they were postmarked. No. Here's my thing. There should be a deadline for mail-in ballots at least 2 weeks prior to the election. And anything that comes in after that can't be counted. It can be set to the side, but it cannot be counted because it did not meet the deadline. We should not be getting things after. Because all that means is you're like, okay, well, we still need to count them. You're throwing people's votes in the trash and you're waiting for other votes to be mailed in. We know you're cheating. We know you're cheating. Everybody knows you're cheating. So conservatives like Justice Alito Gorsuch Kavanaugh pushed for strict adherence to 19th century federal laws setting election day as the receipt deadline to ensure finality and trust. Liberal justices defended state flexibility amid mail delays, with a ruling expected by late June that could affect grace periods in 14 states before the 2026 midterms. Conservatives hailed the oral arguments as a step toward a single election day, while critics warned of disenfranchising voters facing postal service delays. Here's the thing. Again, you need to set a deadline prior to election day for mail-in ballots. And what I'm saying is, I'm not giving an excuse for ballots being mailed in up until the day of, right? Because if you say, okay, 2 weeks prior, this is the cutoff date, and you still get some that trickle in till the day, you'll capture those votes by election day, if that would be allowed, right? You need to give yourself a buffer. But to say anything that comes in after election day, it's election day, not election week, month, or quarter. Right? We're getting into quarters now. We're getting into like 3-month sessions with voting. It's a disgrace. It really, really is. It really, really is. Okay, so now let's get into some updates going on in the conflict in Iran.
Off Iran's ports in the Strait of Hormuz, squeezing Tehran's economy by an estimated $435 million a day, as one former Treasury official says it could all push people back into the streets against the regime.
It's very difficult to predict how long the Iranian people are going to put up with the economic failure and the crisis that already exists in Iran and is just going to be exacerbated by the effect of the blockade. I think in a matter of 2 months, we're going to see a regime really reaching the point of not being able to pay salaries and riots and defections within the regime.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Sheila Nazarian, who fled Iran as a child during the Islamic Revolution. Welcome to you. First, can I get your thoughts on what we just heard there?
I think it's absolutely correct. I think President Trump is the first president that understands that delay tactics and negotiations with this terrorist regime can be used by us also, not just them to get what they want, but by us to get what we want. So saying, negotiations are ongoing as he squeezes the regime economically is the exact right move to make to really weaken this regime, not just on the military level, but also on an economic level, to allow for the Iranian people eventually to rise up and take their country back.
Yeah, this as we are also learning that Iran is set to execute the first woman over the widespread anti-regime protests and demonstrations that we have seen. This is Bida Hemati. Just get your thoughts on that as we have her picture up on the screen.
The regime uses executions, public executions, as a way to intimidate, traumatize the people. And it's nothing new, Sandra. Iran has been at the top of the list for executions year over year per capita for many years. And they're starting to step up these public executions, 1 to 2 beautiful young people who are a full life onto themselves. They execute them to oppress everybody else and say, you know what, fear us, we're still in charge. But it's just so devastating for us to see our brothers and sisters in Iran being used as a oppression tactic by this terrorist, monstrous regime. For us as Iranians in the diaspora, this isn't just an economic issue. It's not just taking out, a terrorist regime and their proxies. This is a humanitarian issue. And it breaks our hearts every single day. And it's why we are fighting as hard as we're fighting here in the diaspora.
Yeah, as you well know, Bida is one of an estimated over 1,600 sentenced to death by the Islamic Republic in the past year. That number is climbing, estimated to be now 1,639 lives. You can see what it has jumped from in just 1 year. I want to play out Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, held a briefing in the last hour, and she said this as far as an update.
I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. I've also seen some reporting about the potentiality for in-person discussions again. Those discussions are being had, but nothing is official until you hear it from us here at the White House. But we feel good about the prospects of a deal.
But the message continues to be, this is very close to over. I'll get your final thought on that.
Again, I just think that these negotiations, quote unquote, we all know you can't negotiate with terrorists. We have learned that from the Iranian negotiations for the last 47 years. They just use it as a stall tactic to continue doing whatever evil it is that they want to do. For President Trump, I believe these negotiations are diplomatic cover for eventually taking the Strait of Hormuz and not allowing this terrorist regime to have any sort of grip on the global economy, and to allow a weakened regime so that the people of Iran can rise up and install regime change.
Dr. Sheila Nazarian, we do appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yes. Now this next video I'm going to play, it's Fox News, but it's a perspective of what a win would look like.
Well, there's the blockade enforcement. The speakers from the vessels, there have been a number of developments. No ships allowed in or out of Iranian ports. Humanitarian shipments are being permitted, subject to inspection. There have been 10 vessels turned around since the beginning, and it depends on who you ask, but it could be costing the Iranians more than $100 million a day. Let's bring in our panel out here in California. Yemisi Egbewale, former Chief of Staff Advisor to the Biden White House Press Office. Caroline Sunshine, former Trump 2024 Campaign Deputy Communications Director. And Trace Gallagher, anchor of Fox News at night. Trace, thanks for having me in your studio.
Brett, great to have you. You look good in that chair.
Oh, nice. What do you think of this? It seems like it may be moving the needle as far as getting them back to the table.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. You know, I listen to politicians, a lot of sound. I like listening to the generals. The generals war game this stuff. They know it inside and out. And when the generals are saying, listen, when you start blockading the Gulf of Oman and you're not letting these Iranian ships out, it's one, draining the funds, right? So as you said, $100 million a day at the very least. The estimates could be higher than that. But the big detrimental thing for Iran is that after a while, after 13 days, 17 days, not only are you not having those ships going out making any money at all, but you can't put oil anywhere. They run out of places to put the oil, so then you have to consider shutting down the oil wells themselves, and it becomes a huge detriment when you're talking about the economy as well as the infrastructure for the oil, and that becomes a problem. So you can see where the Iranians are like, maybe it's time we get back to the table and work a deal on this.
You know, I listen to the Democrats, Yemisi, and it depends, but most of them kind of stick to the talking points, the prices that people feel here, the gas prices, the fact that this wasn't really thought out is really what they talk about. But there's a chance that they could shoot the gap here and that they get a deal with the Iranians. And then what?
Well, and then the Democrats kind of have to pivot to how this impacts people domestically and what the harms have been leading up to this point. Look, we had a fourth failed vote with the War Powers Resolution, and there are a lot of people within the Democratic base that are saying, what else can we do? You know, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is kind of saying we can't do much else. We really have to hold them to the vote on that one end. And on the second, we have to figure out what the end game date is. And Democrats, really, that is their point of pressure there.
There is a hunger on the Republican side, too, Caroline, for an end date, because they know the longer this goes, the more it threatens the political standing ahead of the midterms.
Yes. So, I mean, at the beginning of this war, the Strait of Hormuz was open. And now it's, closed, then open, then closed again. Most Americans aren't waking up every day going, is the strait open or closed? But they are aware that we are in a war. And China wants to see us stay as long as possible. Iran would like to see the U.S. stay as long as possible. But we have to define what a win looks like for us and what a win looks like for the president politically is getting out of this war as soon as possible. There's a segment of the president's base that will stay with him regardless of if the strait is open or closed. But for everybody else, the moderates, the independents, the young men, the Arab Americans in Michigan, I hear from them constantly, we have to get out of this conflict and end it now, and the president can get that political win back. But that window's closing.
There's also this political frustration.
Okay. So I just wanted to play that really quickly, as you know, I get into my videos. But I will have the link for the rest of that video. Now, the next video I want to get into, this was from yesterday. So there were things happening yesterday, obviously, that haven't happened maybe this morning. But this is from, what is his name? David Hookstead. And he's looking at the war from the perspective of China and Iran. And you just saw in that last video where they were talking about that. China would like us to stay as long as possible. So what Iran is, it's very interesting how that would play out for Iran.
You guys are doing great wherever you're watching from today. I'm filming this on April 15th. All information up to date of April 15th. And we have President Donald Trump making a major announcement about China's involvement in the Iran war and whether or not Chinese weapons will continue to flood into the country to shoot at American aircraft, kill American service members. And this is a direct update to what we talked about this morning with the Chinese satellite. I will remind everyone of that. That was used to target U.S. bases in the Middle East before the ceasefire resulted in an incredible amount of damage. Plus, we have more updates with the Strait of Hormuz, and Lebanon continues to be hit. So we got a lot to get into. Before we get into it, please make sure to like and subscribe. Huge boost to the channel and totally free. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Can the Chinese be trusted? How should we retaliate for them helping kill U.S. service members? 13 total have died so far in the war. Or is China actually going to bow out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the notification bell, all notifications on. You won't miss a thing. And then Instagram, David_Hookstead, XD Hookstead. That's where you can find me on social media. DMs are wide open. Reach out with whatever you got. Now let's get into it. So I want to put this on the screen right away. This was announced on April 15th by President Donald Trump, saying China is very happy that I'm permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I'm doing it for them also and the world. This situation will never happen again. They have agreed to not send any weapons to Iran. President Xi will give me a big fat hug when I get there in a few weeks. We are working together smartly and very well. Doesn't that beat fighting? But remember, we are very good at fighting. If we have to, far better than anyone else. President DJT. So President Trump announcing that China will cease sending weapons. We know they're sending air defense systems into Iran. He is now claiming the Chinese will stop doing that. Not saying anything about Russia. Russia continues to send weapons, but will China actually stop sending weapons? Will China literally cut off its second largest ally in the world behind maybe Russia? Remember, the Chinese economy and energy sectors are propped up by cheap Iranian oil. Now, we have a blockade to stop that oil from getting to China currently. We already took away their oil from Venezuela. So that is something we're going to get into later in the video. You don't want to miss that. I am highly, highly skeptical that China is going to actually stop sending weapons to Iran. What I think is likely going to happen is they will just be more covert about it. Why? The longer this war drags on, and the more U.S. military resources are depleted, specifically air defense interceptors, the less China has to worry about that threat when they move on Taiwan. They see this as a way to bleed the U.S. military. China, the Chinese Communist government, cannot be trusted as far as you can throw them. So even if they told President Trump, we'll stop sending weapons to Iran, I don't believe for 1 second they are going to stop helping Iran. In fact, I'm willing to bet just about anything they will continue their help for Iran because they want to see the United States bogged down in a war that goes on as long as possible to deplete precious resources that we would use against them to defend Taiwan. And just in case we all don't know, I talked about this briefly in the video this morning. We're going to talk about it again to show how hostile the Chinese regime is to the U.S. government. A secret Chinese satellite was used to target and blow up American service members and our planes on the ground. So this comes from the Financial Times. Iran secretly acquired a Chinese spy satellite that gave the Islamic Republic a powerful new capability to target U.S. military bases across the Middle East during the war, according to a Financial Times investigation. Leaked Iranian military documents show the satellite known as TEE-01B was acquired by the IRGC aerospace forces in late 2024 after China launched it. This is how helpful the Chinese have been to the Iranians, on top of the weapons and air defense systems, including the stealth killer, which we blew up early in the war. It says time-stamped coordinate list, satellite imagery, and orbital analysis show the Iranian military commanders tasked the satellite to monitor key U.S. military sites. The images were taken in March before and after drone and missile strikes on those locations. So China literally gave them a satellite and helped them get targeting data, as did the Russians, to attack us. And now we're supposed to believe that China is not going to keep giving them weapons. Even if they cut giving them weapons, they're still going to give them the intel. And the intel is every bit as lethal with targeting coordinates as surface-to-air missiles, shoulder-fired man-pads, and things of that nature. I would encourage everyone to take what the Chinese say and what they tell the U.S. government worth a grain of salt. They've said they were going to stop expanding in the South China Sea. They've continued to expand. They have said they weren't really going to get involved in the Ukraine war. They shipped Russia a bunch of weapons. The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, cannot be trusted. Now, at the same time, we have fighter jets in the air over Tehran. You can see it right there on your screen. I'll pause it. You can see the fighter jet right there. A lot of buzz about this online. What we don't know for sure is who the fighter jet belongs to, although I think we can say with Supreme, you can see literally blown up planes on the tarmac there at the airport. I think it is safe to say these are Pakistani fighter jets. These are not Israeli. They are not American. These are Pakistani fighter jets. Why do I say that? The Pakistanis today, on April 15th, have people in Tehran to try to hammer out some further ceasefire. We're going to get into that later in the video as well. And I think what they did is they brought in their own fighter jets to escort their planes going in to protect them. So a lot of buzz about this fighter jet video. I'm confident in saying these are not Israeli fighter jets. They're not American fighter jets. They're not Iranian fighter jets because we blew all their fighter jets up. These are likely Pakistani fighter jets. Now, on that note, CENTCOM releasing an update that during the first 48 hours of the U.S. blockade on ships entering and exiting Iranian ports, no vessels have made it past U.S. forces. Additionally, 9 vessels have complied with direction from U.S. forces to turn around and return toward Iranian port or coastal areas. So now they are saying a total of 9 ships have been stopped and turned around. And then they released audio from a U.S. destroyer talking to ships in the Gulf, issuing them a warning that they might be boarded and targeted if they do not comply. Let's listen.
The U.S. has announced a formal blockade of Iranian ports and coastal areas. This is illegal action. All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded from interdiction and seizure, transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance. Now, the U.S.
So right there, that is from a U.S. destroyer announcing that if you do not comply with the Strait of Hormuz blockade, we are blockading all the Iranian ports and any ship going to an Iranian port. If you do not comply, force will be used. And then right here, we have some updates on negotiations. President Trump telling the New York Post he is unhappy with the reported 20-year enrichment ban offered to Iran by U.S. negotiators. I've been saying you can't have nukes, so I don't like the 20 years. So it doesn't seem like negotiations on the enriched uranium, key point in the negotiations, doesn't seem like it's going terribly well. But at the same time, there are reports that we might extend the ceasefire for 2 more weeks in order to reach some kind of permanent deal. So we've got a lot of moving parts, a lot of different reports. I don't really know what's true, what's not true. Everyone's kind of putting out different information, keeping their cards close to their vest in order to not let people know what is coming. Now I'm going to get the next thing teed up for it. Now, right here, what you see on your screen is the movement of more B-52 bombers that actually appear like they are bound for the United Kingdom, which is where we are staging our B-52s, taking off from Shreveport and being towed across the Atlantic by refueling tankers. So it looks like more bombers are on the move, again, as negotiations appear to be headed in an unknown direction. President Trump keeping all options on the table. The military military keeping all options on the table and getting bombers over there in case this turns back on. We will be ready to do what must be done in order to win. Lastly, Lebanon, which has been a huge point in negotiations, continues to get hit by Israeli airstrikes. This is a targeted strike on vehicles. And then right here, this is a strike on Hezbollah El Kard El Hassan facility in the air, El Zarani, Lebanon. You can see heavy smoke in the air in the background there following U.S. strikes on the position. So that is where we are at. Lebanon continuing to take serious hits at this hour, despite being a major part of negotiations. No ceasefire in Lebanon has been agreed to by the Israelis, even though the Iranians are claiming that was a key part of the deal. So as of me filming this update on April 15th, Trump is claiming the Chinese are abandoning Iran. They're stepping back, pushing back from the table, abandoning Iran to be crushed, even though they need Iranian oil to survive. And I am very, very skeptical. I always tell you guys, I'm going to tell you what I feel. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to tell you what people want to hear or simply repeat what a politician says. I am very skeptical the Chinese are cutting ties with Iran. If anything, they're just going to be more covert after already helping them target U.S. bases and U.S. troops. Negotiations are all over the place. We will continue to monitor the situation. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all again when we have more updates.
Yeah,
well,
definitely give David a follow because I'm liking his updates. I'm just saying his updates are pretty spot on. Now, here's the Promethean update. Now, the interesting thing about her update, again, from yesterday, is really looking at the media bias. Now, you have to remember, here in America, we are under the Smith-Month Modernization Act that was passed in 2012, and it was under the Obama administration. Apologize. And what it did was it opened up propaganda on the American people, where that propaganda, initially, you couldn't do that. Couldn't propagandize us. And you see the derailment of our country and how things are devolving quickly because people are like, no, this is the truth. No, that's the truth. And it's very difficult if you are not getting factual information, and I know a lot of times you guys might say, but you're playing this person and that person. Yeah, I'm trying to get as close to the truth as possible with people that are reporting, in an honest way. If I get something wrong, I get something wrong, right? But I'm trying to at least bring you guys the best information I can.
The media all seem to be supporting Iran. Tom Friedman, the New York Times man on the Middle East, just revealed it. Let's listen to him.
I find myself, Michael, in a situation where I really want to see Iran defeated militarily, because this regime is a terrible regime for its people in the region, and nothing would improve the region more than the replacement of this regime with a regime in Iran that was focused on enabling its people to realize their full potential and integrating peacefully with other countries and stop occupying Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. So I'm all for that. The problem is I really don't want to see Bibi Netanyahu or Donald Trump politically strengthened by this war, because they are two awful human beings.
That's Barack Obama's go-to guy for advice on the Middle East. He would rather Iran not lose and have a nuclear weapon than see Donald Trump get credit for creating a permanent Middle East peace. But this week, two events showed all their theater about defending democracy against Trump, the tyrant, to be garbage. On Sunday, the EU ran a textbook regime change operation against a man they hated almost as much as Trump, Viktor Orban of Hungary. Then they quickly moved to abolish the ability of any member state in the EU to veto decisions made in Brussels. Barack Obama, he called this a victory for democracy. And in Washington, Tulsi Gabbard declassified documents proving that the first Trump impeachment was a total hoax. I'm Barbara Boyd. I've tracked the fight between sovereign nations and financiers of empire for decades. Today, we'll take up 3 stories. First, Europe's turn to fascism. Next, Tulsi's impeachment declassifications. And finally, how Trump is using Iran to outflank and destroy the real opponents of human freedom. But before we get started, hit that like button and share the video. It tells YouTube to expand our reach. Now, why did J.D. Vance go to Hungary in the middle of a war? Well, I'll let Vice President Vance set it up himself. Here's what he said in Hungary about the EU's attack on Orban and the need to defend Western civilization.
Across the West, we've got a small band of radicals, people who do not believe in the future and are often the very people who so wish to govern us. It's kind of weird. If they don't believe in the future, why do they want a life in politics? Yet they speak not of renewal for our nations, but management. They're not trying to build a great future. They're trying to manage the decline of the greatest civilization in the world. Some of them say things like, human beings are no more than pollution upon the earth. They look at our cultures and our borders. They look at the very idea of a nation and ask how we can get rid of them.
And then he said this.
Now I have to pause it there. The only reason I have to pause it there is because, remember, was it yesterday or Tuesday? It might have been Tuesday. He is one of his greatest supporters is Peter Thiel, the guy about the Antichrist. And I was just listening to him. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds like Thiel talk. I'm gonna call it Thiel talk. Because yeah, Peter Thiel is hanging around with the people that say that we're useless eaters. He is a technocrat. But I'm gonna let her finish.
On the election rigging.
The fact that so many foreign actors, whether they're transnational organizations like the bureaucrats in Brussels, or whether it's foreign governments, are literally threatening the Hungarian people, vote this way or we're going to exact our revenge on you, that should make you very angry.
What did Viktor Orban actually do to earn this treatment? Well, he threw George Soros' operations out of Hungary in 2018. He was a declared Christian nationalist who fought the EU's open borders policy and its transhumanist agenda. He was for family, for men. He opposed the Ukraine war. He kept Russian gas and oil flowing to hold Hungarian energy prices down. The EU responded by flooding the country with activist NGOs who mobilized against Orban, blocked $35 billion in funds due to Hungary, starving the economy, and threatening to strip Hungary of any voting power in the EU if Orban won. But that wasn't the end of it. After Peter Magyar won, the EU presented 27 conditions Hungary must meet to get its frozen assets back. Most involved surrendering sovereignty entirely to Brussels. And now the EU is moving to strip all member states of the ability to veto policies made in Brussels. In other words, well before the people voted. This occurred as major protests spread outward from Ireland to France and Germany about the fuel crisis caused by the Iran war. These incompetent tyrants left their citizens dependent on fuel from a strait in the Middle East, which was constantly under terrorist threat. And Donald Trump is rubbing it in on Truth Social. Europe is desperate for energy, and yet the United Kingdom refuses to open North Sea oil, one of the greatest fields in the world. Tragic. Aberdeen should be booming. Norway sells its North Sea oil to the UK at double the price. They are making a fortune. UK, which is better situated on the North Sea for purposes of energy than Norway, should drill, baby, drill. It is absolutely crazy that they don't, and no more windmills. Now, if you're beginning to see that the real war is between sovereign nations and globalist financiers who loot rather than produce anything, you need to subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com. That's the perspective we bring to the transformational events we're all living through now. What Tulsi's declassifications have revealed about impeachment. What Hungary just experienced is the same continuous color revolution hit job that President Trump experienced from 2016 all the way through to his reelection in 2024. This declassification is about President Trump's first impeachment. After Russiagate failed, impeachment was set into motion. It centered on a phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky, described by a so-called intelligence community whistleblower in a complaint to the Intelligence Community Inspector General Michael Atkinson. The whistleblower claimed Trump was pressuring Zelensky for dirt on Joe Biden ahead of the 2020 election and would deny aid to Ukraine if he didn't get it. That was a complete fabrication. The whistleblower was Eric Ciarmella, Joe Biden's point man on Ukraine, but you would never know that from coverage at the time. He secretly met with Adam Schiff shortly after President Trump asked about Biden corruption in Ukraine. Schiff referred him to Atkinson in order to create a shield on his identity under whistleblower procedures, which Atkinson modified for the occasion. Both Schiff and Ciarmella lied about this prior meeting, and Ciarmella did so under oath. Atkinson knew Ciarmella was a registered Democrat with a prior professional relationship with, quote, a 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, and probably he knew a whole lot more. He knew the complaint was secondhand hearsay. The DOJ's own Office of Legal Counsel ruled it didn't even meet the definition of an urgent concern. Atkinson overruled them and sparked the impeachment proceedings. Adam Schiff then classified Atkinson's testimony and locked it in a safe until Tulsi Gabbard just retrieved it. Now, Atkinson had previously worked under Obama DOJ official Mary McCord, the same official who helped falsely charge Michael Flynn. And Biden's Burisma corruption in Ukraine, that was known well even back then. The impeachment was a cover-up aimed at preventing any of that coming out before the 2020 election. But here's the final kicker in this story. Attorney General Bill Barr wanted to investigate the Ukraine corruption allegations and assign them to the Pittsburgh U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation. But the Pittsburgh FBI, who was supposed to investigate this, was running a separate counterintelligence operation against the president called Round River. And that operation ordered that any information about Biden family corruption in Ukraine be treated as Russian disinformation and not investigated. Russiagate, Ukrainegate, all of this is now before a grand jury in the Southern District of Florida investigating the seditious coup against the president and preparing indictments. So let's come back to where we started. The media rooting for Iran because they're worried Trump may succeed in bringing a permanent peace to the Middle East. In September 2024, the heads of the CIA and MI6 sat down together publicly for the first time in history at a Financial Times event in London. They co-authored an op-ed published on the CIA's own website declaring that they were effectively the same entity. They were so intertwined that they determined joint operations based on who had the most assets in any region of the world, and they called it the best athlete to do it. I've written extensively about how British intelligence and the Obama White House concocted the coup against President Trump based on this, quote, special relationship. Well, Trump has effectively blown this relationship to smithereens in his quest to make peace in both the Middle East and in the Ukraine war with Russia. Britain refuses to join the Hormuz blockade and keeps blowing up peace negotiations concerning Ukraine. This week, a former British national security advisor, very high up, Lord Peter Ricketts, told The Independent that the U.S. is no longer a reliable ally and the special relationship is over. Good riddance. Trump didn't wreck the special relationship. He survived it, learned from it, and is now taking NATO apart, the Praetorian Guard for the globalists and their empire. Because Hormuz is not just about a naval blockade. It's forcing revelations about Iran, the Middle East, and London's role in all of it. There's tons of IRGC and other terrorist wealth sitting in London financial houses and properties. Multiple investigations are showing that the IRGC has moved billions through London charities, real estate, and crypto funds. London and Brussels won't join to make peace because terrorism is too profitable for them. But there will be peace in the Middle East, despite the insanity of our media and others. Trump told the New York Post on Tuesday that renewed peace negotiations with Iran could happen as soon as 48 hours from now. and Secretary of State Rubio convened the highest level talks between Israel and Lebanon since 1993. All of this because a real estate developer from Queens seems to know people better than the men and women from Oxford and Harvard. Tom Friedman told you he'd rather Iran not lose than see Trump win. But his real belief is that that real estate developer from Queens is winning. That audience of Harvard and Oxford grads ain't the biggest audience for Promethean Action. We're here to expand the coalition which won Trump the election in 2024. And we face a huge challenge in the upcoming midterms because Obama and his friends want to continue the same operation here that we just saw in Hungary. We have to stop them. And that requires educating the public on what the...
So yeah, so definitely check out the Promethean updates. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to get into some more of this news. Things are wild in Virginia. If you know, you know. So with that, we will see you on the other side.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. With the energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Take your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And this is Mighty Men Thursday. It is open mic. So if anyone would like to join me on the broadcast to talk about anything we've discussed so far on the broadcast, or if there's a topic that you would like to bring up and discuss, please let me know. You can email me at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com and I'll send you the link, or you can send me a direct message on X. I'm checking my messages as we speak. Now, I wanted to get into this topic of the Electoral College. I don't know if you guys have heard about what's happening in Virginia, but apparently they are trying to eliminate the Electoral College and band together as states to do it and say, okay, we just want to submit our vote for the person who has the popular vote. The reason why we have the Electoral College, obviously, because of population, right? Obviously, California and Texas, they're two of our largest states, right? They're bigger than, let's say, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, right? And so that's part of the reason why we have the Electoral College. But people are like, well, it's just not fair if somebody wins the popular vote, but they don't get the Electoral College. Now, in this last election we had, Donald Trump, he not only won the popular vote, he won the electoral. He did both. Now, in the election against Clinton, when he was going up against Hillary Clinton, he got the Electoral College. She got the popular vote. So that's where people were like, well, why isn't it just the popular vote? So I'm going to play these two videos. One, Brandon Lehman, he's talking about Virginia, but the other one is the Virginia Insider, really giving us a little bit more of a background as to maybe why. they're doing what they're doing. And then I want to take a look at just the Electoral College and why was it even set up in the first place? Does it work for us? Does it not work for us? What party put it in place? Were there even parties existing when they put it in place? And I think those are a lot of things that people really don't know about the Electoral College. So let's get into it.
Code red constitutional crisis happening right now, and nobody is talking about it. A Democrat scheme over a decade in the making to permanently steal all future presidential elections is just a few signatures away from becoming reality. This week, Virginia became the latest state to join a pact that unconstitutionally subverts the Electoral College and only recognizes a national popular vote, fundamentally restructuring our form of government from a constitutional republic as the founders intended to what our founders feared the most and intentionally avoided: tyranny of the elite coastal cities. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You guys won't want to miss this. But let's start by hearing exactly what this illegal Democrat alliance is.
In 1824, 1876, 1888, 2000, and now in 2016, the winner of the US presidential election lost the popular vote. Luckily for us, there is a way to get rid of the Electoral College, and it's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. The way that the compact works is pretty simple. It's an agreement between the states to bind the electoral votes to the popular vote. The beauty is that it only takes into effect once there are enough states that have joined the compact. In other words, once 270 electoral votes out of 538 have been represented within the compact, these 270 votes will be forced to vote whichever way the popular vote goes, forcing the winner of the election to follow the popular vote. This will remove all power from the Electoral College and return it back to the voters.
So that video was from 2016, just to give you an idea of how long Democrats have been coordinating this seditious takeover. And the scariest part, ladies and gentlemen, as far as I can tell from researching this video, it's perfectly legal. Every state is allowed to allocate its electors however it chooses. But the assumption baked into that rule is states would never arbitrarily relinquish their sovereignty and would always, if not mostly, vote based on the interests of their population. When the founders were forming the republic, each state was its own separate country, and states maintaining a certain level of sovereignty was a primary concern in the formation of the Constitution. They could have never conceived the state of Virginia saying, we'll just vote however California and New York votes. But Virginia's governor just made that the reality.
Virginia has joined a national effort to get around the Electoral College. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger signed a bill adding the Commonwealth to the National Popular Vote Compact. It's an agreement among states to award their presidential electoral votes to whichever candidate wins the national popular vote. With Virginia, a total of 18 states plus D.C. have joined the compact, totaling 222 electoral votes. The compact won't go into effect until enough states sign on to reach the required 270 votes to elect a president.
So now every vote cast in the Commonwealth of Virginia is effectively meaningless. All of Virginia's Electoral College votes now go to whoever the blue cities decide to vote for. Let's look at a map to see how many states are a part of this pact, because now that Virginia has officially signed on, we are inches away from this becoming the new presidential voting system. So every state in green has already joined this pact for a total of 209 electoral votes. Virginia just got added, which brings the total to 222. And as you see, North Carolina, South Carolina, Michigan, Kansas, Arizona, Nevada, and Alaska currently have active legislation to join this pact. And remember, all they need is 270 combined electoral votes for this to permanently override our system. Democrats are cramming this through because based on the 2030 census projections, the migration out of failed blue states into red states will give the Republicans a permanent electoral advantage, meaning in all future elections after 2030, the Democrats can carry the popular vote and will almost always lose electorally. But let's listen to a Democrat Virginia state senator explain why this is so morally necessary.
First of all, the Electoral College now has resulted in 5 different presidents being elected who did not win the popular vote. I think most Americans and most Virginians think they live in a democracy. But when it comes to the president, they actually don't. They live in a plutocracy. Because the founders chose to put this electoral college system in between the voters and the election of a president. And I want to remind everybody, partly what motivated that at the time, not only was it a distrust of voters, not only was it a distrust of the masses, and by the way, I would just note that at the time the Electoral College got put in place, most of the people sitting in this chamber probably wouldn't even be able to vote. Because if you weren't male and you didn't own 25 acres, you didn't have a vote when this thing got invented.
Democrats heavily rely on civil ignorance and appealing to emotional altruism to cram through their authoritarian agenda. We very explicitly do not live in a democracy, but Democrats vehemently regurgitate that blatant falsehood because democracy sounds fair and just, so how could you be against it? But you learn from that senator's explanation that he's not harmlessly ignorant about how our government works. He actually has contempt for how our government works. He doesn't want democracy because it's more equitable. He wants democracy for the exact same reason the founders didn't establish a democracy, because all elections will be determined by the major cities. And as of right now, the top 10 largest cities in America are all Democrat. He, like all Democrats, smugly believe they're the smartest, kindest, most enlightened human beings who have ever existed, and everyone who came before them was primitive, morally bankrupt, and vile. So all the systems and institutions they created need to be destroyed because they're inherently misogynistic and racist. They pretend the founding fathers were too stupid to conceive of pure democracy. Like while these guys were mulling over what kind of government to form, nobody proposed democracy because no one had the wisdom and insight of a gender studies major. But let's hear the Virginia state senator's other reason why we must abolish the Electoral College: slavery.
So I want to remind everybody that the other reason this got put in our Constitution was because at the time the Constitution was written, about a third of the people who lived in the South weren't considered humans. And at the time, when they wrote the Constitution, they put language in the Constitution that said that African Americans only counted as 3/5 of a person. 8 out of the 40 people in this room right now sit on this floor. And because of that language, it actually augmented the size of the congressional delegation of the South by about 42%. The only reason they agreed to the Constitution, including this state, by the way, is because of that language in the Constitution. And guess what that translated to when it comes to president? It translated into presidential power. The origins of the Electoral College, my friends, was to basically augment the power of the South because of slaves.
So the ultimate litmus test to determine if someone is an emotional thinker or a rational thinker is to ask them about the 3/5 compromise, the law that counted black slaves as 3/5 of a citizen in the census. An emotional person will say, "Oh my gosh, that's so immoral, it's inhumane. How could you ever count someone as 3/5 of a human being? The slaves obviously should have been counted as a whole person." Not even understanding supporting that sentiment would be to side and give more political power to the slave owners. The free states wanted slaves to not be counted at all in the census. They didn't want the massive population of slaves to be able to bolster the political power of the very people subjugating them. Any logical and truly
Because here's the thing, the slaves weren't allowed to vote. They were going to count the bodies, but they were not going to give them a vote or a choice. Yeah. So what he's saying is true. It's a numbers game.
Passionate person would conclude that slaves shouldn't be included in the census at all. If the slaves were counted as one person and not 3/5, the South would have probably been able to prevent the abolition of slavery. But the left only cares about performative kindness and being perceived as compassionate. So by proudly stating that slaves should have been counted as a whole person and not 3/5, you get applauded as a true humanitarian, even though the downstream effect of that would have been the permanent subjugation of black slaves. But I digress. Let's take a final look at the final election numbers between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump to see how all future elections will likely play out. So Kamala Harris lost the popular vote by about 2.3 million votes, but got handily beaten in the Electoral College. But if Democrats successfully change the way elections are conducted, This is how all future voting will go. The Democrat strategy will no longer be to win over moderates in swing states or to form any bipartisan consensus. The Democrat strategy will permanently shift to massively increasing voter turnout in heavy blue cities. Why spend the time trying to argue your case to swing voters that you actually have to convince with good policy when you can go to ideological strongholds with millions of people, campaign on emotional outrage and partisan propaganda, and simply convince more people in already favorable areas to come out and vote? If it becomes purely a numbers game, the Democrat Party has every incentive to allow every illegal alien in their borders to vote. They will pay homeless drug addicts on the street to vote. They can simply lie and promise free everything paid for by the evil rich people. If you increase voter turnout by 10 to 20% in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, that makes up Kamala Harris's entire deficit. Our presidential elections stop becoming about getting the support of a wide array of varying interests and start becoming about metropolitan majoritarianism. And the worst part is voter turnout is notoriously low in deep blue states because most people already see the election results as a foregone conclusion. If the top 10 cities in America, which are all Democrat strongholds, see a 20% increase in voter turnout, it would be almost mathematically impossible for red states to compete. And the worst part about all of this is we know that if a Republican president somehow managed to win the popular vote, these Democrat states wouldn't stick to their agreement and allocate all of their electoral votes to that guy. They would quickly ignore and dispose their commitment and try to compete in the Electoral College. They're only going to enact this pact if the candidate that they want to win is leading in the popular vote. And all they need is a couple more states to join this pact for this night.
Yeah. And so that's all it is. You know, it's like Democrats. Here's my thing. You need better policy. You need better candidates. Your party is failing the American people. Everything you touch turns to a disaster. It does. Anybody really happy about the Democratic city that they live in and not moving to a city that is at least somewhat moderate, right? Between Republicans and Democrats. Anybody leaving? I mean, I'm moving because the county I'm in is predominantly Democrat and I see it going downhill. You know, I see what they're bringing about and it's disgusting. And I feel sorry for Henry County because it's going to look worse than DeKalb County. Give it 5 years. And that's leadership. Okay. Now, people may be like, well, that's really harsh. No, it's not harsh. It's reality. Lived this already. See, I grew up in California. I know what Orange County used to look like. I know how beautiful it used to be. It is a dumpster fire and it's democratically run. Democrats just need to change their policies. You're not working for the American people. You're working against the American people. You like death and destruction. And that's what you bring with your party. So now let's look at the Virginia Insider. Because I think it's Brandon. He mentioned about this whole pact, right? So now we want to get a take from the Virginia Insider, who's on the ground in Virginia.
We're angry about the gun ban put in place by Democrat Governor Abigail Spanberger. Just wait until you hear that Democrats are seething because of Spanberger's amendments to their bills. In this video, we're going to talk about how Democrats in the legislature are beside themselves because the leftist Spanberger didn't pass their bills as is. And now they're saying these bills that cover everything from ICE removing illegal criminal aliens from Virginia to weed all over the place, right down to organized gambling, do not go far enough. They're not leftist progressive enough. We're going to get into all of that. But first, this is Virginia Insider. I'm Uriah Kaiser. We're giving you the news and information you need to take back your Commonwealth and to connect with your community. Please like this video, share it, and hit that bell and subscribe button so you know when we post news about Virginia. All right, we're going to start today with Senator Saddam Aslan Salim, a Democrat in Fairfax County, the Bangladeshi man in Fairfax County who is working on bills to stop ICE from arresting illegal criminal aliens in our state. Clearly hasn't checked the supremacy clause, but yet still he thinks he can control what the federal government does here in Virginia. Governor Spanberger amended his bill, and he is furious, calling it a toothless right without a remedy, arguing they were meant to draw a clear line against abuse, fear, and unnecessary cruelty, but no longer deliver meaningful protections. And who is he trying to protect? Illegal criminal aliens here in this country. His bill, Senate Bill 351, and the companion bill, House Bill 650, prohibit certain federal immigration enforcement activities, including arrests, in sensitive protected areas such as courthouses, schools, hospitals, healthcare facilities, polling places, and offices of the Commonwealth's attorney, unless the amended his bill, and he is...
Did you hear that? Polling places. Why are they so concerned about polling places when they keep telling us people who are not citizens aren't voting? If they're not voting, why do you keep stating ICE shouldn't be at polling places? And they're not, by the way. But you keep bringing it up. That means they are voting. Okay? That means you don't have clean voter rolls. That means that you do have motor voter laws where you automatically register people to vote regardless of their immigration status. See, that's the part that that's why y'all crashing out about the SAVE Act, because if people have to actually state if they are a naturalized citizen or a citizen of this country, you're going to lose your voting block. So this whole thing where they want people to opt into this pact would be a moot point. And they would never win anything. Because, see, the people that they actually support, the illegals, wouldn't be able to vote. Why do you keep saying I shouldn't be at polling locations? I'm just pointing it out. Just pointing.
Is furious, calling it a toothless right without a remedy, arguing they were meant to draw a clear line against abuse, fear, and unnecessary cruelty, but no longer deliver meaningful protections. And who is he trying to protect? Illegal criminal aliens here in this country. His bill, Senate Bill 351, and the companion bill, House Bill 650, prohibit certain federal immigration enforcement activities, including arrests, in sensitive protected areas such as courthouses, schools, hospitals, healthcare facilities, polling places, and offices of the Commonwealth's attorney, unless the officer has a valid judicial warrant or judicial subpoena. Now, we've heard this before. This is the first thing Governor Abigail Spanberger did when she came into office in January, is she signed an executive order barring police cooperation with federal immigration officials at ICE, saying that they needed to have a judicial warrant for them to come and get an illegal criminal alien out of Virginia. The response from ICE has always been it is impossible to get a federal warrant for a state-level crime. So what Spanberger did was create this impasse between the state and the federal agency, making it impossible for state and local officials to work with ICE. And there we have the sanctuary city policies. Now, this bill right here would have codified those sanctuary city policies, but Governor Spanberger made key amendments, which left Aslim seething. Saddam Aslan also wanted to ban ICE from wearing face coverings while they are working in Virginia. His original bill banned state, local, and federal officers from wearing facial coverings while performing official duties. What Spanberger did in this case, she amended it, removes the Class 1 misdemeanor penalty for wearing masks, eliminates the requirement for law enforcement officers to wear identifying information and the name of their agency while on duty, and retains some limits on covering faces, but with broader health safety exceptions and without strong enforcement. Salim criticized both sets of changes, saying these bills were, quote, meant to draw a clear line against abuse, fear, and unnecessary cruelty, unquote. He added that they fall short of protecting immigrant communities and upholding fairness, dignity, and public safety. So this is the same guy who introduced a bill this session in January 2026 to define Islamophobia. All right. So what he did was he defined Islamophobia as malicious prejudice or hatred directed toward Islam or Muslims, and clarified that the definition applies even if the victim is not actually Muslim, as long as the perpetrator targeted them based on a perceived adherence to the faith. So what he's essentially trying to do is create a protected class by law in Virginia. And whether or not you messed up, whether or not you meant to do it, whether or not you had any bias whatsoever, if they determine that you had a thought crime against a Muslim, then this law would allow the authorities to come and arrest you. Now, this bill has been pushed to the 2027 session. It was not acted upon this session, so it is likely to come up again in 2027. Asleen also announced he's running for Congress in what could be the new 7th district, the famed lobster district, based upon that gerrymandered map that Democrats are forcing down Virginians' throats. He is one of several Democrats who have announced their candidacy for the district that yet hasn't even been created yet. The April 21st gerrymander that seeks to take away 4 seats from Republicans and replace it with 10 Democrat seats, 1 Republican seat. Other Democrats in the General Assembly are firing back at Spanberger. Lawmakers on the Senate Finance Committee were especially vocal this past Tuesday when those amendments were handed down, hammering the governor's cabinet over the loss of expected revenue after Spanberger vetoed skill game legislation. Now, these are the skill games. These are the
And I will leave this link so you guys can finish the rest of the video. But yeah, so that's what's happening in Virginia. Again, they are a part of the pact that's going on. I was hoping he would get to it and talk about it. I think this might be it.
happened due to the pressure the media coverage produced and put on these Democrats in Richmond. But Servo may have a point there, because I have questioned several times whether or not Spanberger was communicating with members of the General Assembly. Because of those 50 new tax proposals, Spanberger is the one that ultimately looks bad. And it's clear that she was not communicating with members of her own party.
Okay. It does mention it, but I just wanted to bring Virginia into it because they are a part of the most recent pact with this. So, of course, I went into Grok and I was like, can you give me a brief timeline and explanation of the Electoral College, its origination, how it's used today? You can also give me the evolution of the pact mentioned in this video, right? So the Electoral College, right, is a U.S. system for electing the president and vice president, established by Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution. Instead, now this is established by the Constitution. So it is very interesting that they're able to create this pact that circumvents the Constitution. Just saying. Instead of a direct popular vote, the president is chosen by 538 electors, 1 for each member of Congress plus 3 for Washington, D.C. A candidate needs a majority of 270 electoral votes to win. Each state gets electors equal to its 2 senators plus its House representatives. So for California, it has 54, Wyoming has 3. Right. Most states, 48 plus DC, use a winner take all rule. The candidate who wins the state's popular vote gets all of its electoral votes. Maine and Nebraska are exceptions. They split electors by congressional district plus the 2 statewide. So its origin was in 1787. The framers rejected a direct popular vote. They feared uniform voters, demagogues, and large state dominance. But that's what they want to go back to in the Democratic Party. Come on, y'all. And Congress choosing the president feared legislation corruption and executive weakness. Here we go. They created the Electoral College as a compromise, independent electors chosen by state legislatures. But we all know that a lot of these people are catered to by their parties, whether they're Republican or Democrat, to vote a certain way. It's disgusting. These people are not unbiased. That's all I'm saying. They're very biased. It is what it is. With the liberate and vote. It also helped balance small versus large states and accommodated the 3/5 compromise on slavery, right? Southern states gained extra influence without direct popular vote because they had the bodies. Again, like I told you, it's a numbers game. Alexander Hamilton defended it in the federal number 68 as a safeguard against tumult and disorder. Okay, so here's the timeline, right? 1787, 1789 Constitution drafted, and George Washington wins unanimously. Okay, so we're going to go down how it's used today. Voters in November cast ballots for president, but they're technically choosing slates of electors pledged to candidates. State law certify results. Electors vote in December. Right, that's when the electors cast their votes. The system gives small states slightly disproportionate influence and forces candidates to campaign in battleground states rather just population centers. But see, what they're trying to put in place would completely reverse that. Okay. So the evolution of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, right? It criticizes Virginia's recent, that's the video. So in 2000 election aftermath, frustration over popular vote, Electoral College mismatch leads scholars, including John Koza, to propose a state-based workaround instead of a constitutional amendment. Because remember, the states are still sovereign. So that's what they're doing. It's really crazy. They don't care. They do not care what is best for America. Now, here's what I find fascinating. What if all of those places flipped and they were no longer Republican or Democrat? What if they were all redemption states? What are you going to do then? Where all of the candidates are redemption party candidates? Huh? And that's what the people want. Is it still going to be as you stay, as you state, right? Are you really going to follow through? Or are you going to make up another rules so that you can win? This is about control. This is not about the republic. It's not even about democracy. It's about slavery, in my opinion. This is straight slavery. They do not care what the people want. All they want to do is maintain power. So in 2006, the NPVIC formally drafted and announced it's an interstate compact where participating states agree once states totaling 270 electoral votes, every member state will award all its electoral votes to the national popular vote winner, regardless of who won that state. So let's just say Trump wins the state, right? But because they're participating in this pact, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who wins the state. They're still going to vote the way they want it. It's what it says. It is what it says. This is gross. This is gross. So they're saying we are going to have our person regardless. But like I said, what happens when everybody votes against your person? And they don't get the popular vote at all. What happens when the other person, like again, Donald Trump, he got the popular vote and the electoral votes, but he got the popular vote. So what happens when the person that you don't want gets the popular vote? Even though they didn't win yours, even, regardless of one state, right? That's the craziness. That's crazy. Maryland, in 2007, Maryland becomes the first state to enact it. So this has been going on for a while. Under our noses, nobody's talking about it. So the legal hurdles exist. So opponents argue it's an unconstitutional in-run around the amendment process, may violate the compact clause, right? Interstate agreements affecting federal functions often need congressional consent and could trigger massive multi-state recounts or disputes. Courts have not yet ruled on the compact itself, but the Supreme Court has upheld broad state power over electors. So it has never been tested in a real election. So we'll have to see. At Pro, it's a legitimate state-driven reform to fix a perceived flaw. It's only a perceived flaw because you keep losing. I'm sorry. The popular voter loser winning twice in 16 years. Demographics can shift. The compact would apply whoever wins the popular vote. Now, the con, it's a coordinated partisan effort to nullify the constitutional design that protects smaller red states, effectively turning the U.S. into a pure popular vote system without the required constitutional amendment. Again, just because you think people are going to continue to vote one way, what if they change the way they vote? And what if you actually start counting votes and stop cheating? What if you actually stop allowing people to vote in our elections that shouldn't be voting? And I don't want to hear it. There's 19 states that do not have ID laws right now. This is why we have the Save America Act, because you allow people to vote in your state without an ID. They just show up and vote. So you have no idea if that person is even a resident of the state. You're just counting numbers. And you have dirty voter rolls. And you have people voting that shouldn't even be voting. It's crazy. It is really crazy. So I asked which party initially put the Electoral College in place, or was it nonpartisan? So the Electoral College was nonpartisan at its creation. No modern political parties like today, Democrats or Republicans, existed when it was designed. So this is so the Electoral College has always been nonpartisan. Now, the United States had no formal political parties in 1787. The framers, founding fathers, assumed the new government would operate without organized national parties or factions dominating elections. They designed the system with independent electors who would deliberate based on merit, not party loyalty. But that's where we're at. This is more about party than it is about the people. They put in place something to keep us safe and from imperialistic rule. But we have people in office with an imperial mindset, and they don't care. They just don't. We need better people in office and not puppets like what we have right now. Okay. Trying to think. So bottom line, no single party put the Electoral College in place. It's nonpartisan creation. The framers explicitly tried to design it to avoid party control or cabal influence, as Alexander Hamilton argued in the Federalist number 68. Modern partisan debates, which party benefits more today, are a much later development. The system has evolved through state laws, the 12th Amendment, and practice. But its origin was about balancing competing state and structural interests, not advancing one future political party over another, because that's what it's become. And that's the sad part, like I said. It has definitely become a partisan issue. Now, I wanted to bring up, hopefully I'll be able to get through these last 3 videos, but I wanted to bring up a new state law in Florida that it's gonna shake a lot of people.
Evening to a new Florida law. It makes changes to your driver's license or state-issued ID. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Nasha Sherman.
And I'm Jim Barry. It's going to show if the person is a U.S. citizen or not. Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law, and if it goes into effect on January 1st.
CBS News Miami's Yvonne Taylor is your reporter in Doral. Yvonne, what about the people who already have a driver's license?
Jim and Naja, anybody who holds a driver's license right now or an ID issued by the state of Florida will not be required to get new documentation. And let me highlight that, will not be required to get new documentation right away because the cards will hold valid until they expire. Now, when that happens, that's when things change. Next January, anyone getting a new Florida driver's license, renewing one, or getting an ID will have his or her immigration status on it.
I don't know if it should be on a driver's license. I don't think you should have to just say that you are not a citizen.
Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Florida SAVE Act into law this month after the Republican-controlled House and Senate passed it.
It's another way to identify the person.
Daniel Fernandez, the Miami-Dade tax collector, is in charge of the driver's license agencies in Miami-Dade.
What this law going to do is only to put you in your physical car a designation that will say that you are a citizen of the United States of America.
For those who are not citizens, it's supposed to say NC, not a citizen, even if the person is a U.S. resident.
Why is that necessary? This is something that coming from the state because we don't make the law.
The new law is part of an election reform package that seeks to strengthen the verification of citizenship.
The bill is unnecessary.
Senator Chevron Jones is one of the Democratic lawmakers who voted against it.
You're actually in favor of maintaining student and retirement community IDs when it comes to voting. Why?
In 2006, the legislature allowed students to be able to use their voter IDs in order to vote.
They still had to show proof of age and citizenship when voting.
This year, the legislature said that those IDs could no longer be used.
This Venezuelan couple at the driver's license office in Miami are concerned about the future. What if a police officer stops you? They'll see you're not a citizen. That could change the way they treat me. It's concerning.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
it is going to change the way they treat people because now you've got to prove if you're a citizen or not, right? That's what this is coming back to, and that's what people don't like because they're going to be like, wait a minute, okay, if they see I'm not a citizen, yes, you're not a citizen, but are you here under a status? Are you here under a visa? Did you illegally stay past your visa? Because see in other countries, they kick you out the country if you overstay your visa, right? They're not going to allow you to just stay somewhere. They're not. They're going to be like, okay, you've overstayed your visa. You need to leave our country. And we're not going to arrest you because we're not going to use our taxpayer dollars to even, do anything with you. We're just going to send you back. We're going to deport you, right? Deportation works in other countries. It just doesn't work here in the United States. They crack me up, y'all. I'm serious. They just crack me up because why in the world? Now it's an issue. Now it's a problem, right? And I'm just wanting to send some links to Ozzy. Ozzy, hopefully these are the links that you're talking about, and these are the areas. If not, just let me know. Oops, sorry about that one. Let me delete that comment. That was probably a mistake. Just not typing. So now. So it goes over that, basically that state law. So it's going to be non-citizen. But did you see how the other Democrat was like, well, they'll still have their IDs. It's like, so there were people voting in our elections who shouldn't have been. Students that are here on a visa should not be voting in our elections. Only American citizens. But if you do not know if somebody's an American citizen or not, you have to basically, gentleman's agreement, honor it. Right. And that's what's been happening. It's been happening too far often. And people who aren't citizens here are getting the privileges. This is why they don't want ICE at polling stations. Yeah, because you show up with an ID like that, they're going to question you because you're not a citizen. It's crazy. Now, the next video I'm going to move on to is Byron Donalds, y'all. You got to hear him out. You got to hear him out on this.
One of the biggest issues in Florida and around the country. Yeah. You've been accused of wanting a pathway to citizenship for illegal aliens. How do you respond to that, and what exactly is your position on that? Do you support deporting all illegals?
My response is I've never supported a pathway to citizenship. I know the video that people are referring to. I did an interview with CPAC back in 2021. This is before Joe Biden let in more than 10 million illegal aliens into the United States. And the question was about how do we actually bring immigration into common sense reality today? And I said, you have to start with border security. You have to start with security first, secure the border, get that done. The second thing you have to do is go through reforms of the visa system. H-1B visas, they got to go. They've been abusing American workers. There's so many reforms in the visa process that are needed because this stuff was written in the 80s, not today. And so it all has to be reformed. The third thing was following the 9/11 Commission's review and saying that we have to have a biometric exit system. We have a biometric entry system in the United States. We still don't have a biometric exit system. That has to be done. Then I said, we have to make sure we end chain migration. We should go back to a quota system in immigration because the United States has to be able to assimilate people coming into the country. If you have workers who are using visas to come in, we got to be able to take stock of that, assimilate them into our way of life. The sixth thing I said was we need to end birthright citizenship. This is actually before the court right now. Birthright citizenship, in my view, is a bastardization of the 14th Amendment because that was for black slaves. The 14th Amendment was written for the children of black slaves in order to give them citizenship in a country that had denied them and treated them, obviously, they were slaves, as slave labor. That's the purpose of the 14th, and all of the debates leading up to the 14th Amendment support that position. What the United States has done in practice, not by law, not by constitution, is that if you're just born in the United States, you've been granted citizenship. But let me explain what this means to people. The Chinese government has over 500 birth tourism companies where they have Chinese foreign nationals who basically come over on a tourist visa, give birth in the United States. The baby is now a US citizen under the way it's looked at, and then they go back to China. And then that child who has citizenship has the ability to come into the United States at any given point in time. The parents don't have allegiance to the United States. The parents are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, but the children are now somehow citizens. That's crazy. And that's what current interpretation does. So these are all the things I talked about in this video. And then at the end of it, I said, and then once all that is done, the American people are good people. You would probably have a debate on what to do with everybody who's still here. But that's the end, not the beginning. The Democrats, what they want is to do a pathway to citizenship up front. I will never support that, ever. That's amnesty, and it's wrong. And by the way, that's what happened in 1986 when they did the immigration deal that Ronald Reagan did amnesty for 3 million illegals at the time. And the promise was they do border security and immigration enforcement. And the wall never got built. So we've tried this before. So my position is get all the stuff done. Then you can talk about who's still here. 100% I support deporting illegals. I supported Donald Trump. I support it today. What Governor DeSantis is doing today with members of law enforcement all being under the 287G program, I support that as well. And we're going to continue that because what has now happened for only 5 years after that interview that I did back in 2021, what has now happened is the Biden administration was flagrant in border security and internal enforcement. And now we have Democrats who are stonewalling funding border agents, customs agents, and immigration agents. The Democrats defunded policy that would actually allow for ICE to investigate child sex trafficking rings. That's funded under ICE, and they have stopped that funding. That is insane to me. So I just think that these are the things that we have to be focused on. But to your point, look, Javi, I get it. It's campaigns. A lot of guys are losing. They're losing big, I'm just telling you. A lot of guys are losing, and so they're trying to go back and find my words from some interview and splice splice everything together into some 30-second soundbite to make it seem like I support amnesty. I have a 100% rating from Numbers USA for my 6 years in Congress. It's just a flat out lie because we have people who are losing in their campaign efforts. And so what are they going to do?
Yeah, and he's right. He doesn't support amnesty. Why support amnesty when you got around it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, let's go in. So Byron Donalds, he was born in October 28th, 1987. So he was born prior to amnesty. Because remember, amnesty didn't happen until 1986. I was 15 at the time. All right. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, specifically raised in Crown Heights. He is a birthright U.S. citizen under the 14th Amendment, as he was born on U.S. soil. Oh, so you said all that with your whole chest, sir. Are you going to abide by that? Are you going to abide by? That's my question. Because people are going to start questioning your citizenship because you said this was written for slaves, which you're not. So your melanation does not give you entry. The question is, were your parents naturalized? That's the bigger question, right? So public records on Donald's own statements provide limited specific details on exact immigration timelines or naturalization dates for his parents. But the consistent background is this. So his mother, she's Jamaican heritage immigrant, frequently described as his Jamaican mom, right? She raised him as a single mother in Brooklyn and worked in healthcare. Okay. She was in the U.S. by the time of his birth. But available sources do not specify whether she had become a naturalized U.S. citizen, was a lawful present resident, green card holder, right? Or held another legal status at the time. Though no reports indicate she was undocumented. So we don't know whether she was naturalized or undocumented. We don't know. We don't have that information. So he's under the assumption his parents were good under the 14th Amendment, right? Born or naturalized. So that's his assumption. But where's the proof? No, you said all of that with your whole chest. We want to know, are you an anchor baby? I mean, this is just the facts. I'm just saying. So his father is described in heritage references as contributing Panamanian or Jamaican Caribbean roots. Donalds has referred to himself as Jamaican and Panamanian heritage and compared his background to Colin Powell's Jamaican immigrant family. Details on his father's presence or legal status in the U.S. around 1978 are sparse. Donald was primarily raised by his mother, and the father is not prominently featured in biographies. In short, both parents had Caribbean immigrant backgrounds, primarily Jamaican, Panamanian. They were not U.S. born citizens by birth. Donalds himself has never claimed his parents were U.S. citizens at the time of his birth, right? He highlights his immigrant heritage while benefiting from just soil citizenship under the prevailing interpretation of the 14th Amendment. So, sir, this all goes back to the question, were your parents naturalized? Because you never talk about that. Because if they weren't, you were nothing more than an anchor baby. I'm not being rude. I'm not really necessarily using your words, but you just said it with your whole chest. That people take advantage of birthright citizenship, right? You said it's a bastardization of the 14th Amendment to just come here and have a baby and claim citizenship. Huh? What? Yeah. Yeah. You, sir. So to me, for the people of Florida, this needs to be on the ballot. I am definitely not caping for any immigrants at all that are here illegally, just having babies to be anchored to the soil. I want all y'all gone. You know how, everybody knows how I feel about it. Because see, my people were here the right way. Yeah, I am of the soil. And I don't want people being anchor babies. I definitely don't want them in our politics. but you are in that politics, sir. You're like, yeah, I've always voted to make sure that people are here the right way. Are you sure? Because my question goes back to, are you here the right way? You may not want to hear that, but I want to know that. You better come up with some documentation of whether your people, your parents were naturalized. Because it looks like, I mean, your dad, we don't know what happened to him, right? The relationship between your mom and you. We don't know if she was here on a student visa, overstayed. We don't know their status. But here's the thing. Regardless of their status when you were born, they benefited from the 1986 amnesty bill, automatically making them citizens. That's why you don't talk about it. Because they benefited from the very thing that you don't want anybody else to benefit from. And I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that part. But let's not gloss over, let's just say, the fact that you're an anchor baby. Because you are. And that's all you are. In my eyes. You are not a true citizen of this country. You benefited from amnesty. Okay? And in my opinion, when the birthright citizenship is overturned, I want it to go all the way back to 1986, because 1986 was the cutoff. It was never supposed to be amnesty again. Because you even sat there and said, what do we do with all these people? Yeah, what we do with all these people is they get deported. However long it takes, you're not a citizen here. They lose all their benefits. They lose their housing. They lose anything and everything given to them by the federal government. Trust me, if people can't get a job because they're not citizens, if they can't live, they have to leave. They'll be forced to leave. Because the minute they ask for any handouts, they'll be like, oh, you're not a citizen because you can't get a job. It needs to be cut off at the knees. Stop funding these organizations, these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, these charitable organizations. They keep leeching on these people that are here illegally. Yeah, shut it down. Government, stop giving them money. You keep funding all of this illegal immigration like it's okay. The states are doing it too. But see, you pull that federal money. Oh yeah, everybody's gonna holler. Because the states can't afford these people. And they know they can't. That's why they have an injunction right now with the food stamps. Yeah. The states were supposed to send over their information. So now, USDA has got them recertifying, and they're fighting that because they know they have people on the rolls illegally getting funding from the federal government. Because see, the thing about it is, if they are actually doing that, they can go to prison. Any and everybody that pushed the button, even if they were told, doesn't matter, they go to prison because it is a federal offense to give somebody federal funds that are not citizens of this country, that are here illegally. Yeah, it's a crime. They've all committed crimes. They're all liable. But is anybody going to go to jail? Because we had an AG in place. They ain't sending anybody to jail. The new one, the interim one, he's even worse. Right? We need somebody in there that's going to actually do the job. So Donald Trump, if you're listening, yeah, that guy, whoever he is, he needs to be fired too. We need somebody in there who's actually going to do the job of the AG and start arresting people and start sending people to prison and start getting these people out of our country and start getting these people up off of our backs that are using us, the American people. It's time. So with that, that will end our broadcast for today. For Mighty Men Thursday, we will be back tomorrow with our Prayer with Friday, because we have a lot to pray about. There's a lot going on. So thanks again for joining me here on Unfiltered. Vision News, and we will see you on the other side. But remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.